Well, this is definitely out of my comfort zone. But I'm honored to do it anyway. I definitely didn't expect how hard this would be to write. Yeah, I think up until today it felt okay, but everything came in today. As I said, this is kind of out of my comfort zone. I wasn't sure how to do this, but here we go. I think our family is used to not doing things the way everyone else does it. I'm going to start out by doing more of the traditional eulogy that people would be familiar with. Cleo was born in December 1929. 26. Sorry, 26. 28. And she was a child through the Great Depression and a teenager through the Second World War. And at 15 years old, she married the love of her life, McGhghy. Bob, as we all knew him. They got married while he was on short leave from active duty. I was told that they eloped to avoid wasting his entire leave on planning a big wedding. Which I guess also led to their firstborn, Robert, who was born in 1945, while Bob was still on duty. It would actually be 6 months before she got to share this new addition of their family with him. After the war, they would go on to have 4 more children. Excuse me. Billy, Joyce, Ronald, and Deanna. And they lived in Ogden, Utah for 15 years. All the while, Cleo was a very busy lady. Some of that which included teaching Sunday school, Bible studies, many piano lessons, which of several of her students went on to be very recognized piano players, pianists. And she played the organ for church and helped run the landscaping business, and not to mention keeping those 5 kids in line with a deadly mother's stare that she was very proud of, that she could make from the bench of the organ while they all sat on the front row.
You're 3, sir.
In 1965, they did something that I'm sure most people thought was absolutely insane. And they packed up and immigrated to Canada, landing at mile 98 of the Alaska Highway, where they would pioneer and build what we all now know as the family ranch. And in 1967, one more child was added to the mix, as Connie was born. This new life was not simple by any means, as they carved that ranch out of wild, untamed land in the middle of nowhere, and had to learn what it was to survive a Canadian winter and live off the land. I heard many locals in the area all but cast lots for their clothing that first winter, as they would say those stupid Yankees aren't going to survive the winter. But they did, and by God's grace, they learned to thrive. Cleo was very proud that she also started a Bible study and organizes some church services in 101. She became the president of the Women's Aglow Ministry in Fort St. John. And in 1983, Bob and Cleo went on a missions trip to Israel, where they had their eyes open to a greater cause than themselves. And shortly after returning home, they began connecting with people. And in 1987, they joined with the organization of Bridges for Peace and started the first Canadian branch with a charity status. Cleo was named the National Director for Canada, Bridges for Peace, and they spent roughly the next 10 years of their lives very focused on that ministry and what they felt they were called to be a part of, including 12 more trips to Israel. And in 1997, the ranch was sold due to Bob's health, and they moved to Chilliwack to pursue retirement, warmer weather, and less muddy roads. A few years later, they moved to Chase, BC, following cleaner air and cheaper golf. And when Bob passed away in 2012, Cleo moved to northern Alberta to be closer to family, and then moved to Fort St. John a few years later into a care home at the Peace Lutheran, and then into the care facility in Fort St. John, where she spent the last days of her life that she passed peacefully at the age of 94.8 on November 4th, 2023.
We're just going to take a little bit of time for if anybody has a story or something of significance you want to share about Cleo, or grandma, or great grandma, or whoever she was to you, or mom. I'll start it off by sharing why I'm looking kind of ridiculous wearing moccasins with my suit. I actually did that because I just feel like she loved the finer things of life. She was a very distinguished lady, but also a pioneer, and was able to, she tanned hides and all sorts of stuff. Really was at home in the wilderness as well. So anyway, if anybody has something you want to share, like 2 minutes or whatever. And I kind of joked about the idea if people are forming snowballs, your time's probably up. So but anyway, feel free to come up and share.
I just want to say, Grandma, I forgive you for going to the bathroom first and making me walk back from the outhouse all by myself. That was a thing.
I came into the family through Ron. We bunked together in a dorm for a year. And my folks were on a rock crusher that moved every 6 to 8 weeks, so it wasn't handy. And Ron would take me home for the weekends, and Cleo would treat me like one of the other kids and smack me when I wasn't doing right and tell me to don't be shy, eat up. Big thing.
You've always been our brother.
That was a few years ago, 1970.
Yeah, that was
My name is Gary Sujenko, and I came from Winnipeg. I'm the National Director of Bridges for Peace in Canada, and I didn't have the honor of meeting Cleo, but her legacy continues to live, and today over 5,000 Christians in Canada support Israel through Bridges for Peace. And Cleo started this ministry here in Canada, and in honor of Cleo, we've planted 10 trees in Israel. We hope that her vision carries on, and we just feel so honored to be part of her legacy.
Dennis actually got to know the McGhghys before I did, because he worked around the ranch a lot in the oil business, and he used to tell me about this family that lived back there. And so then I got to meet Cleo when I first came to the Lord, and right about the time she was very instrumental in starting the very first Women's Aglow here in Fort St. John, and she led that right through the main glory years of Aglow. They were wonderful, wonderful meetings, and we would often end up meeting up with them, Cleo and Bob, at the Mama Panda's. They loved to go to Mama Panda's. And we'd end up seeing them there and having a meal with them, and just was good fellowship. But one time, there was a big meeting planned in Prince George, an Aglow meeting, and the roads got closed. Everybody here was going, but the roads got closed for some reason. and Cleo still had to go. She was in leadership position and she had to go, so she was flying. And for some strange reason, I decided I was going with her. So I flew too. And we stayed in the same room. And, you know, big age difference and stuff didn't seem to matter. We laughed and talked and shared testimonies and right till we fell asleep about 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was fun. Like, she kind of went back to being just fun and relaxed, and it was a good time.
Honored to have the opportunity to say a few words. About 30 years ago, Cleo and Bob stopped by her house. She dropped off a box of VHS videotapes, all about Israel. And I didn't get it back then. I really didn't get it. I didn't start getting it till about 1996, after our first trip to Israel. But a serious encounter with the Holy Spirit at the wall. And ever since then till today, and I'm so glad Representative from Bridges for Peace is here, because your mom, your grandma, your great-grandma, your friend, whoever she was to you, she got it. And God is saying to his children all over the world, pay attention to what I'm doing with my kids. Because I said like 3,000, 2,500 years ago, I was going to bring them back to their land, and then I was going to take the veil off their hearts and show them who the Messiah really is. And he's doing it right now. He's doing it right now. And some of you here in this crowd, I know you from years back, you've cried out for revival. One of the greatest intercessors for revival in North America is Lou Engle. And you know that. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, God spoke very clearly to Lou, you're not going to get revival in America without revival in Israel. And the short version of what I want to say to you today is, they need us and we need them. And together we're going to see the glory of God in the earth like we've never seen it before. And Cleo got it. And I'm blessed to be here today in honor of her.
I want to be less formal if I can get through it.
You can, son.
From hearing her, my very condensed version of her life story, that I even got some stuff wrong. You can see that she's done a lot in her life and seen a lot in her life that probably none of us will ever see. From 100 years ago till now, that was something I was pondering on, was the things she's seen. We can't even fathom what she's seen. And from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. She was very well put together for most. If you've seen her out in public, she would barely answer the door if her hair wasn't done. But as Shane pointed out, that many of us at home, grandma was grandma. A lot of us knew her as tough as nails, and you didn't dare tell her she couldn't do something. There's literally a million stories of how she loved to beat the boys at their own games. Whether it be trapping, hunting, fishing, or racing a snowmobile across the lake. And let's just point out that that city girl from Nebraska lived almost 30 years in the Canadian bush without a flush toilet or hot water and running water. And I literally rewrote this 5 or 6 times because there's so many things I could say. And it just always came back to I gotta just go by my own experience. I had the privilege of spending a great deal of time with Grandma. I lived a lot out on the ranch. Our family lived there. I spent summers there and school breaks there. I helped build the addition on their house. I had a great honor and privilege of spending a lot of time with them. Even as an adult, I moved down south and went to a school, and I was close to them again, and I would spend weekends at their place just watching the news and football games. And then even these past few years with her in Fort St. John, and even the past 2 years of her being in the care home, I got to spend a lot of time with her. And in my life, I've watched her go through some incredible storms. From the loss of family members, grandchildren, the loss of Grandpa, the loss of some of her own children. And the last few years of her being confined to a bed in a facility during some of the craziest times any of us have ever seen. She was human. She was not perfect. She made many mistakes, and she made many she wished she hadn't made. Some of those she confided in me. But I can tell you there's one thing that will stick with me forever, is that woman was stubborn to the core in her faith. A stubbornness that I'm sure has rubbed a few people the wrong way at times. And you may not have agreed with her words or her tactics. But I grew to absolutely admire her stubborn faith, where she was not moved in her convictions and her faith in the love of God. I feel like I can say that not a day went by where she was not fervently praying for the safety and well-being, and most of all, the spiritual growth and salvation of her entire family. From the oldest to the youngest, until her very last days. As a child, staying and living on the farm, I walked many miles with her between the house and that prayer chapel. And we would get down on our knees and she would pray for the entire family. And she would contend for them and intercede for them and all of her loved ones, no matter where they were at. And above all, that they would find a relationship with him. And in my 8 to 10-year-old perspective back then, excuse me. My 8 to 10-year-old perspective back then, I never truly understood the importance of what she was doing. But what I did know without a question was that it was a labor of love, an unwavering faith, and the deepest love for her family. She simply trusted God and knew that he heard her prayers. Right until recently, 30 years later, this never changed. Even when she could no longer remember their names, it did not stop her from praying for her family and begging me to go through the list of names so that she could hear them. And to be honest, that was the source of her greatest pain in the last year, was feeling guilty that she couldn't remember her grandkids and great-grandkids' names so that she could pray for them. But I tell you, she did it anyway. And her greatest prayer that never got old was that her family would grow to know and have a relationship with the Lord. And and that she would see them again one day. This type of steadfast, stubborn faith through all the trials of life that she lived in 94 years did not just happen by chance. She met with the Lord daily in her own way, and he touched her heart in a way that you could never take it away from her. Even when things were very tough, she always looked to him for strength and comfort, and I'm so grateful for that example in my life. I only hope that I can walk that steadfast in my own convictions. She spoke James 1:8 to me several times. A double-minded man will be unstable in all of his ways. And she encouraged me to just look to the Lord and trust in him, and he would see me through anything that comes. My path may look a little different than hers, but I pray that I can stay as steadfast and even stubborn in my faith as she did. And I know that this is only possible by drawing near to him and letting him show me his love and grace and mercy. As I'm closing, I really feel like I'm speaking on her behalf, because we've had this conversation not long ago. And as I ask, I encourage you all just to seek him in your own way, right where you are, and he will meet you there. And I want to close with a favorite verse that she recited to me 10,000 times, I think, and probably many of you. It's Psalms 91. It says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, and in my God I will trust." And she really stuck that out to the very end. I don't know how to end this from there. Thank you all for coming. And actually behind them, there's some, in the snow there, we didn't have flowers. So you want to say something? We didn't have flowers, but when we were cleaning out Grandma's room, I seen this jar full of pussy willows sitting there, and it was, man,
She loved pussy willows.
if you could someone bring those out here, especially the grandkids. She always had a jar sitting on her table whenever there was something to be picked. And I know people like to lay flowers or whatever, and we just thought we would just set this out here if you wanted to lay one of these on there as you leave. And I think you're welcome to hang out as long as you need. But you can just
understand. Feel free to leave as you want, but our official part of our time together is finished. So thank you for coming.
So,
Yeah. The only feels haven't been the same. Like you say, it doesn't seem so bad because it's only been way forward and anything, but then you're here today and it's like, it's not.
yeah, it's so different.